After 50 years in Parliament and 11 as a Cabinet Minister, I've had some experience of democracy, the limits to it and the threats to it.
And all the power that I ever had I got from those who voted for me and to whom I was accountable and from whom I learned everything.
The basis of democracy is the belief that we were all born equal and that that equality must be accepted by those in power.
We should live peacefully. We don't want army. We don't want gunshots in the fight.
Probably the main lessons, if you don't keep up the pressure for democratic control, you lose it. It's use it or lose it. And that is something that people find hard to understand. There is never a final victory for democracy. It's always a struggle in every generation. And you have to take up the cause time and time and time again.
When we had a president, we'd see a giant global political figure. The man that would be the political leader for 500 million people. The man that would represent all of us on the world stage. The man whose job was so important that, of course, you're paid more than President Obama. Well, I'm afraid what we got was you. And the question that I want to ask, that we're all going to ask is, who are you? I'd never heard of you. Nobody in Europe had ever heard of you. I would like to ask you, President, who voted for you? And what mechanism? Oh, I know democracy is not popular with you lot. And what mechanism do the peoples of Europe have to remove you? Is this European democracy? Well, I sense though that you're competent and capable and dangerous, and I have no doubt that it's your intention to be the quiet assassin of European democracy and of the European nation states. You appear to have a loathing for the very concept of the existence of nation states. Perhaps that's because you come from Belgium, which of course is pretty much a non-country. But since you took over, we've seen Greece reduced to nothing more than a protectorate. Sir, you have no legitimacy in this job at all, and I can say with confidence that I can speak on behalf of the majority of the British people in saying, we don't know you, we don't want you, and the sooner you're put out to grass, the better.
Well, as you said, Mr. President, you wouldn't like to be rude, and
Nigel Farage.
In generations to come, children will be told a story. They'll be told that once upon a time, Europe was divided. There was a big wall down the middle of it, and the people in the East were very poor, and they had no democracy, and they lived under an evil system called communism that killed millions of its own people. But joy of joys, the wall came down, and we finished up with 27 nations, and those people lived in democracy, and 500 million people lived in peace. But sadly, no, there is more. I promise you there's more. Thank you. I should just sit down now. Well, I must say, that's the first time I've ever received such applause, and I'm tempted, Mr. Verhofstadt, I am tempted to sit down, but if I may, sadly, the story continues, the politicians in charge became very greedy, and they wanted money for themselves, and they wanted power, and so they resorted to lies and deceit, and they staged the most spectacular bureaucratic coup d'etat that the world had ever seen. But they didn't need to use any bullets to do it. They were much cleverer, much more scheming than that. No, what they did is they put in place a new treaty. It was called the Lisbon Treaty. And then they gave 27 people total unlimited power. These would have been the people that made all the laws. Of course, they already had a flag and they already had an anthem, but they went about building a new state. But they ignored the people. And what they did, whether they knew it or not, is they recreated the very evil system that the people in Eastern Europe had lived under before. But the incredible thing was that many of the new bosses had also worked for that same evil system before. Well, of course, the plan was flawed, and their fanciful monetary scheme collapsed. But still, the new bosses wouldn't listen to the people. No, they made life tougher and tougher. They put tens of billions into poverty. They denied people a say. And in the end, those people had to resort to violence to get back their nation states and their democracy. And the moral of the story is they had learnt nothing from history. Members of the European
Mr.
Parliament,
President.
before you give this Commission power, remember
Thank
that
you,
60
Mr.
years
President.
ago, an iron curtain came down on Europe.
Thank you,
But now,
Mr. President.
with this Commission, there is an economic iron fist, and it's being felt in Greece today. We cannot build.
Thank you,
a
Mr.
new
President.
country.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. Thank you very much.
This is not possible, please.
The main lessons, if you don't keep up the pressure for democratic control, you lose it. It's use it or lose it.
To find out more about who we are and what we stand for, go to the UK Independence Party website at www.ukip.org.